Today, we're tackling a topic that can make or break your characters, the dreaded Mary Sue. You know, the impossibly perfect protagonists that leave readers feeling a bit more annoyed than inspired. We're going to look at 5 key signs that might indicate that your character is veering into Mary Sue territory. And trust me, if you understand these, it's the difference between a character your readers love and one that they love to hate and not in a good way. But before we jump in, if you're enjoying the content on the Fifi Mangaka channel, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe for more comic creation tips. And hey, if you want to see how I approached writing 3 female leads in a fantasy adventure comic, check out my comic Olde Treehouse. It's available on Global Comics and the link is in the description below. So let's get into it. Let's kick things off with perhaps the most obvious sign: a character's flawless appearance and abilities. Mary Sues are often depicted as incredibly beautiful or handsome, and you know this because the narrative constantly reminds you of it. It's not just a passing mention. Other characters frequently comment on their appearance, sometimes to the point of distraction. In visual media like comics or manga, Mary Sues are often drawn in a way that sets them apart, making them stand out as more attractive or unique looking than the rest of the cast. But it's not always just about looks. Mary Sues and Gary Stews tend to excel at everything. They are often multi-talented and largely to an unrealistic degree. They may be brilliant scholars, unbeatable fighters, and charismatic leaders all wrapped into one. They pick up new skills and powers with ease, and they often master them in days in what would take others years to learn. Now, I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with creating a character who's attractive or skilled. I think the problem arises when these traits aren't balanced by any real flaws or limitations, or when they don't serve the story in any meaningful way. So how can you avoid this sign? I think you should start by giving your character genuine flaws that actually impact the story. Maybe they're super smart, but they struggle with empathy. Or they're physically strong, but they have a lot of self-doubt. Consider how their appearance and abilities fit into the world that you're making. Are they actually realistic for your character's background and experiences? Remember, it's often a character's struggles and imperfections that make them relatable and interesting to the audience. Perfection might seem appealing as an author, but it's the flaws that make a character human. Moving on to our second sign, universal adoration. This one is kind of related to flawless appearance. This is when nearly everyone in your story seems to love, admire, or be attracted to your character for often no reason. In a Mary Sue scenario, your character walks into a room and instantly becomes the center of attention. Other characters are absolutely drawn to them, want to be their friend, or fall in love with them at first sight. Any dislike or criticism of this character from other characters is usually portrayed as unjustified or stemming from jealousy. This universal adoration often extends to the narrative itself. The story might bend over backwards to showcase just how amazing this character is, sometimes at the expense of other characters or the plot itself. In real life, personalities clash. People have different values, goals, preferences, etc. Not everyone gets along, and that's okay. In fact, it's these interpersonal conflicts that often drive the most interesting stories. So to avoid this particular Mary Sue trait, try giving your character a mix of different kinds of relationships. They can have close friends and allies, of course, but also include characters who are indifferent to them, or even those who actively dislike them, and for valid reasons. This variety definitely will make your story feel more realistic, and it will give you opportunities for interesting conflicts and character growth. Our third sign is one of my most hated. It is when the entire plot seems to revolve around your character. In a Mary Sue scenario, every major event, every conflict, every resolution, it centers on showcasing how amazing, important, or special your character is. This often manifests in a few ways, okay? First, your character might be a chosen one. We all know that trope, right? The only person who can save the world or solve the central conflict of the story. While there's nothing inherently wrong with the chosen one trope, I think it becomes problematic when it's not balanced by real challenges or growth. Second, other characters might exist primarily to support, admire, or be saved by your main character. Their own personal goals and development take a back seat to making your protagonist look good. And lastly, coincidences in the plot tend to work in your character's favor. They always happen to have the right skill or be in the right place at the right time to save the day. So, to avoid this, try to expand your narrative focus. Develop lots of subplots that don't directly involve your main character, and then let secondary characters have their own goals and conflicts and growth arcs. Make sure your protagonist's central role in the story is earned through their actions and decisions, and not just because the plot demands it. So here you want to remember that a rich, engaging story world is one where multiple characters have agency and impact in the plot in meaningful ways. Your protagonist can still be central to the story without overshadowing everything else. We're more than halfway through, and this fourth sign is absolutely critical. A lack of real consequences. In a Mary Sue narrative, your character might face challenges or make mistakes, but they never really suffer for them in any lasting way. This can show up in several ways. So your character might always find a convenient solution to their problems, often at the last minute. They might be forgiven easily for major mistakes or betrayals, or they might emerge from physically or emotionally traumatic experiences with zero scars and no lasting impact. The problem with this is that it robs your story of a very key and important thing called tension, and it robs your character of growth opportunities. When readers know that everything is going to work out fine for the protagonist no matter what, it reduces the stakes of your story and can make it feel less engaging. And to me, this is one of the critical problems with Mary Sue characters. Real impactful storytelling often comes from characters facing genuine consequences for their actions and decisions. The consequences create tension, they drive character development, and they make the eventual victories feel earned and satisfying. So to avoid this particular Mary Sue characteristic, don't be afraid to let your character fail sometimes. Let them make mistakes and then deal with the fallout. And show how their decisions and actions have real lasting impacts, not just on themselves, but on the world and the characters around them. Because it's through facing and overcoming these challenges that your character is going to grow and your readers will become more invested in their journey. And finally, we've come to our last sign, a lack of meaningful character growth. Mary Sues often start the story as already fully formed, idealized characters and end it essentially in the same way. They don't learn, change, or evolve because they were already perfect to begin with. This static nature can be a real problem for your story. Character growth is what makes a narrative satisfying. It's what keeps readers engaged and invested. We want to see characters overcome their flaws and learn from their mistakes and become better versions of themselves. A Mary Sue might go through the motions of a character arc, facing challenges and making decisions, but they don't really change as a person. Their core beliefs and attitudes and behaviors remain the same from start to finish. I'm looking at you, Lofi. To avoid this pitfall, give your character room to grow. Start them off with clear flaws, misconceptions, and plenty of room for improvement. And then, through the events of your story, challenge these aspects of their character. Let them struggle and adapt and ultimately change. This growth also doesn't have to be positive, by the way. Sometimes the most compelling character arcs involve characters changing in complex or even negative ways in response to their experience. Guts from Berserk is a very good example of this. The key is that they change in meaningful, believable ways that reflect the journey that they've been on. Remember, it's often a character's growth and evolution that makes them memorable. A perfect and unchanging character might seem appealing at first glance, but it's the flawed characters who learn and grow that tend to stick with us way after we're done reading a story. And there we go, 5 key signs that your character might be straying into Mary Sue territory. Now, if you recognize some of these traits in your own characters, don't panic. Recognizing these tendencies is the first step to actually avoiding them. Creating compelling and well-rounded characters is a journey, and it takes practice and reflection, and a lot of times a willingness to push your characters out of comfort zones and also push yourself out of your comfort zone as a writer too. So the goal isn't to never use any of these elements, but it's to use them thoughtfully and in moderation. A character can be exceptionally skilled in some areas as long as they have balancing flaws. They can be centrally important to the plot as long as other characters have agency too. And they could also be admired by some characters as long as that admiration is earned and not universal. So I hope you found this deep dive helpful, and if you did, please give the video a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the Fifi Mangaka channel for more comic creation, writing, and art tips and discussions. And don't forget to check out my comic Olde Treehouse on Global Comics to see how I approached writing 3 female leads in a fantasy adventure setting without making them Mary Sues. The link is waiting for you in the description below. So thanks for watching, and remember that flaws are not weaknesses, they're opportunities for great storytelling. See you in the next video.